Hello there once again. Today we're going to be looking at a very exciting topic. But in a way to start up this particular topic, I want to ask these few questions, or probably just one. Have you ever wondered how urine is formed and removed from the body? How is urine formed? Now remember that we said something about urine. We said it is an excretory waste and must be removed from the body so that the body, it will not interfere with metabolic activities in the body. Urine is also a toxic waste and should not be kept in the body. We've also seen in excretory system 1 that the kidney is one of the organs that is actually used for removing, is the only organ used for removing urine in mammals, especially man. So the topic we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be talking about excretory system 2. Now, in this topic, we will be answering the question how urine is being formed and as well as how it is being removed from the body, how urine is being formed. Now, before I go into that, urine is actually formed in the kidney. That's all I just will tell you for now. Urine is formed in the kidney. And we'll be looking at the structure of the kidney, looking at everything about the kidney and how this urine is formed. Now, if you are actually set, let's begin this topic. Now, it is excretory system. Now, we have objectives. By the end of this topic, you should be able, as a learner, to be able to describe the structure of the mammalian kidney. You should also be able to describe the excretory system of mammals. Now, the structure, the mammalian kidney is not the excretory system. We're going to come to that. Number 3, you should be able to describe the structure of the urinary tubules and how it works. And number 4, you should be able to explain the mechanism of excretion in mammals. We're going to be using man as our case study. And then finally, you should be able to describe excretory system of flowering plants. Now, let's take a look at all of what we're going to be discussing. Now, it is important to understand again that in mammals, we have what we call excretory organs. There are excretory organs. Now, these excretory organs, they include the skin, and we said the skin excretes out urine. It excretes sweat, and sweat is actually made up of urea, salt, and water. Number 2, we said that the mammals, they possess kidneys. Now, these kidneys are used to excrete urine, and we said urine comprises of urea, there is salt in it, there is excess water in it, you will see some to an extent uric acid, and then also hormones. And even if care is not taken, you might also see digested food substances. All right, that is probably if the kidney is faulty or is damaged. So you see digested food substances. And number 3, we talked about the lungs. Now, the lungs on its own is also an excretory organ. The lungs excrete carbon dioxide. Okay, it excretes carbon dioxide. If you look up our video in respiration, you're going to see that the lungs excrete carbon dioxide. And then number 4, we said we have the liver. And we said that the liver also excretes urea as well as bile salt. And I told you bile salt is also useful to an extent, but when it is in excess, it becomes a threat, okay? Now, it can be useful in the emulsification of fats, that is breaking down fats into tiny droplets, okay? But in this particular class or this topic, we are going to narrow our discussion seriously to the functions of the kidney, everything about the kidney. In subsequent classes, we're going to be talking about the skin, probably in the topic regulation of internal environment. We're going to discuss about the skin. We're also going to be discussing about the liver. In respiratory system, we have already talked about the lungs. So this time around, we will be concentrating our discussion on the kidney, okay, the kidney. Now let's take a look at the structure of the kidney. Now that is the kidney. The kidney is actually located at the posterior end of the abdomen. Now the kidney has a lot of things there. Now if you look at the top of the kidney, there are some organs you can find there. We call that a gland, and that is called the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland produces what we call adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a hormone that is also referred to as an emergency hormone. That is, when there is an emergency, what helps you to respond to those emergency, like the increased heartbeat, the sweating of your palms, the rising of your blood pressure, and so on. These are all functions of the adrenaline, which is the hormone that is released by the adrenal gland. And please take note that the adrenal gland is located at the top of the kidney. Now the kidney also occur in pairs. Okay, you have two kidney. We have the left and also we have the right kidney. Now the left kidney is a bit or slightly higher than the right kidney. And the kidney, for now, like I said before, is one of the major excretory organ in mammals. One of the major excretory organ in mammals is the kidney. Now, in terms of color, the kidney is reddish brown in color. Reddish brown in color. Now, there are several things also to take note about the kidney. If I should get the kidney and divide it using a knife and slice the kidney into two halves, that is longitudinally. We call that longitudinal sectioning. If I should divide the kidney into two halves, there is something I'm going to see. Now, you will understand with me if you do that, you will see that the kidney is actually divided into two main regions. Two main regions. Now, these two main regions are, we have the cortex, which is the outer region, and then we have the medulla, which is the inner region, the cortex and the medulla. Now, in the cortex and the medulla, narrow tubules called the urinary tubules pass through both of them. I repeat, within the two regions, that is the cortex and the medulla, narrow tubules, we call those narrow tubules urinary tubules. And we'll be discussing a lot about these urinary tubules. We're going to look at that. In fact, urine formation takes place in the urinary tubules. And we're going to be seeing a whole lot about the function of, or how urine is actually formed in the urinary tubules. Now, also, these tubes, or these tubules, which is the urinary tubules, they open at a triangular tissue, which is called the pyramid. It is called the pyramid, and the pyramid further opens to a funnel-shaped cavity, which is called the pelvis. The pelvis channels down or continues down with a cord that goes down, and that cord is called the ureter. The ureter continues and it ends at the bladder, the urinary bladder, and the bladder also connects with the urethra. Please don't get confused. The ureter connects the kidney to the bladder, but the urethra connects the bladder to the outer environment, okay, to the external or outer or exterior, all right? So now, another thing to take note of is that the kidney is well supplied with blood capillaries. It is well supplied with blood capillaries, mostly from the renal artery. When you hear the word renal, it's simply in terms of biology, it refers to as what? It refers to the kidney. When you hear the word pulmonary, it refers to the lungs. When you hear the word hepatic, it refers to the liver, okay? So the renal artery supplies blood to the kidney. And we're going to see why it supplies blood to the kidney much later. Now take a look at that diagram. You're going to see the pyramid. It is triangular in shape, and then you're also going to see the pelvis, which extends and continues with the ureter, and then you can also see the cortex, which is the outer region, and also the medulla, which is the inner region. Now, next is excretory system of mammals. Now, the excretory system of mammals consists of several organs that are responsible for the removal of excretory waste. There are several organs responsible for the removal of excretory waste. Now, number one on the line is the kidney. That is where urine is being formed. So we have the kidney, we have the ureter, we have the bladder, and we have the urethra. Now, this is what really happens, and this is how excretion takes place in mammals, or this is the process of excretion. The process of excretion is in this excretory system. Now, when urine is formed in the kidney, or after urine is being formed in the kidney, it passes through the pelvis and then through the ureter. Remember, the pelvis is connected to the ureter. So it passes through the ureter, and from the ureter, it enters into the bladder. Now, it keeps entering into the bladder. It is stored temporarily in the bladder till when the bladder is full of urine. Pressure is being mounted on the bladder, and then the bladder opens, or the urethra opens, to release urine, which is the excretory waste, to release urine out of the body of the organism to the exterior. So that is how urine, or removal of urine, takes place in mammals. And I told you the case study we're using is what? Man. So we have the kidney, we have the ureter, we have the bladder, and then we have the urethra. Please don't forget this. Now, I said before, urine is formed in the kidney. After formation, it is passed through the ureter into the bladder, where it's stored temporarily. And when the bladder is full, pressure is being mounted, and then also the urethra opens to allow the urine to be removed out from the body. Now, next thing to take note is the structure of the urinary tubule. The structure of the urinary tubule. Now, the urinary tubule, like I said, is found at the cortex and the medulla, the cortex region and the medulla region, which is the outer and inner region of the kidney. Remember, we did a longitudinal sectioning of the kidney, and we said that the kidney is divided into two main regions, which are the cortex and the medulla. And I also told you that the urinary tubule is found between, it is found found between or within the cortex as well as the medulla. So that is the structure of the urinary tubule. Now, the urinary tubule is made up of what we call the Bowman's capsule. It is made up of the Bowman's capsule. It is also made up of what we call the proximal convoluted tubules. It is also made up of what we call the Henle's loop, and then finally the distal convoluted tubules. In some books, you see the distal convoluted tubules as the collecting tubules, while the proximal convoluted tubules is called just convoluted tubules, okay? So whichever way you see it, it is still the same. Now, please note this. The urinary tubule is also called nephron. The urinary tubule is also called nephron. Now, the urinary tubules, there is something you should note about the urinary tubules. We talked about the renal arteries, and I told you that the renal arteries supply blood to the kidney. Now, this blood enters first into the kidney. It enters into the kidney first into the Bowman's capsule. So the Bowman's capsule receives blood containing excretory waste from the renal arteries. Okay? Now, this blood form a mass of blood capillaries. There are masses of blood capillaries that forms in that Bowman's capsule. Now, these mass of blood capillaries in the Bowman's capsule, on top of the Bowman's capsule, is what we call the glomerulus. We call that the glomerulus. Now, the capillaries also in the glomerulus rejoin to form blood vessels that lead out of the capsule. They come out of the capsule. Now, they don't just come out of the capsule and then are scattered all over the body. No, they come out of the capsule and they form a network of capillaries round the urinary tubule itself, and then rejoins again to form a branch which is called the renal vein. Remember, the veins take blood away, and then the arteries bring blood into. So in other words, the renal artery brings blood into the kidney at the Bowman's capsule, and then the renal vein takes it away from the urinary tubules, mostly at the distal convoluted tubules. So you see that the renal veins taking blood away, and that blood it is actually taken away is a blood that does not contain excretory waste. Are you getting me? It doesn't contain excretory waste. Why? While the blood is passing through the kidney, it is being filtered out. It is being taken out of the blood capillaries. That is, the excretory waste is being taken out. And we're going to be looking, in fact, that is how urine is actually formed in the body. So the next thing we're actually going to be looking at is how this urine is being formed in the body. What are the processes that are involved during urine formation? All right. Now let's look at the mechanism of excretion in mammals. Mechanism of excretion in mammals. Now, the mechanism of excretion in mammals is all about urine formation, or the formation of urine. Now, the formation of urine, it occurs in 3 stages. It occurs in 3 stages. The first stage is called ultrafiltration. We're going to be explaining it in details. Ultrafiltration. The second stage is called selective reabsorption. And then the third stage is called hormonal secretion. First stage, ultrafiltration. We also have selective reabsorption and then hormonal secretion. Now let's take a look at the first stage for urine formation. Now, it said it's ultrafiltration. Now, as the name implies, it has to do with a process of filtration. Now, remember we said that blood enters into the kidney at the Bowman's capsule. And this blood, they form what we call a mass of blood capillaries, okay? Mass of blood capillaries. And this mass of blood capillaries, if you could remember also, we said it is called the glomerulus. So, firstly, blood enters into the kidney through the renal artery and forms a mass of blood, which is called the glomerulus. Now, as the glomerulus is being formed, it circulates within that area. So what circulates is, or the blood now contains water, the blood contains urea, that blood contains nitrogenous compound or waste, that blood contains minerals, there is sugar, there is plasma solutes, all are found inside of the blood. Even oxygen, many things are found inside of the blood. But what is being filtered into the Bowman's capsule is the water, urea, nitrogenous compound, minerals, sugar, and plasma solute. They are filtered into the Bowman's capsule. Okay, they are filtered into the Bowman's capsule, hence the name ultrafiltration. So ultrafiltration has to do with the filtration of some filtrates from the blood into the Bowman's capsule. So that is what actually occurs during ultrafiltration. The second one is selective reabsorption. Selective reabsorption. Now, selective reabsorption has to do with when the blood or the filtrate moves from the Bowman's capsule, it now enters into the tubules. if you could imagine or remember the structure I showed you concerning the urinary tubules. After the Bowman's capsule, the next thing or next structure you see is the proximal convoluted tubules, as well as the next one is then the Henle's loop, which is like a U shape, the Henle's loop. Now, once filtration, ultrafiltration has taken place and the filtrate has entered into the Bowman's capsule, it continues and flows down into the what? Tubules. It enters first into the proximal convoluted tubules and from there to the Henle's loop. Now, what happens when it enters the proximal convoluted tubules and Henle's loop is what we call selective reabsorption. It simply means some useful substances that may have entered through the filtrate into the Bowman's capsule are now reabsorbed back into the capillaries. Remember I told you that the glomerulus, which is the mass of blood, they channel out again, they branch out of the Bowman's capsule and they form tiny networks of blood capillaries that surrounds the tubules. Now, what happens is this. These useful materials or those useful substances that are found in the filtrates diffuse, okay? They move by active transport due to concentration gradient. They move by active transport from the filtrates, which are now in the Bowman's capsule, into the blood streams or into the blood capillaries. So that is what we call selective reabsorption. Selective reabsorption. And selective reabsorption takes place at the the proximal convoluted tubules as well as the Henle's loop. So what are some of the filtrates? What are some of the things that are reabsorbed? We have amino acid can be reabsorbed. In this case, we also have some water, we have sugar, we have some salts that are useful to the body and then reabsorbed back into the blood capillaries by active transport. And then also the last stage is called hormonal secretion. Hormonal secretion. Now, after the filtrate passed through the proximal convoluted tubules and entered the Henle's loop, it flows continuously into the collective tube or collecting tube, which is also called the distal convoluted tubules. Once it gets there, hormonal secretion takes place. Now, the fluid becomes concentrated as it gets to the distal convoluted tubules. That is the fluid or the filtrate that is coming out from the Henle's loop and the proximal convoluted tubules. As it gets to the distal convoluted tubule, it becomes what? More concentrated. Now, at the distal convoluted tubules, more water is reabsorbed by the action of ADH. Now, what is ADH? ADH is antidiuretic hormone. It is a hormone that is found at the pituitary or produced by the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is actually located at the midbrain. So the midbrain, the brain produces this ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone. And one of the major functions of the antidiuretic hormone is the reabsorption of what? Water. And then when the water is reabsorbed from the filtrate, urine is finally formed. Now, this urine that is finally formed flows into the pelvis, like we said initially, flows into the pelvis, and from the pelvis, it flows through the ureter, and from the ureter, it enters into the urinary bladder. It keeps entering into the urinary bladder. Once the urinary bladder is full, pressure is being mounted on the urinary bladder, which then contracts, and then the urethra opens in order to discharge urine out of the body. So this is the way urine is being formed, and then urine is being removed from the body. Remember the question we started with? How is urine formed and how is it removed from the body? Urine is formed through these three stages. One is ultrafiltration, the second one is selective reabsorption, and the third one is hormonal secretion. All takes place within the urinary tubules in the kidney. And after which it is done, it flows through the ureter into the bladder, and then out from the bladder through the urethra. It is then discharged out from the body. All right. Now, before we go, let's take a look at excretion in flowering plants. Now, flowering plants also undergo excretion. Very important. Now, flowering plants, like I said, in terms of respiration, we said they do not have special organs of respiration. Also, flowering plants do not have special excretory organs or organ of excretion. No. They still make use of the stomata as well as the lenticel. They make use of the stomata and the lenticel as their excretory waste. Of course, the stomata is found at the epidermis of the leaves of plant, while the lenticel is found at the back of the stems of older plants. Okay, so that is the structure of the stomata and also the structure of the lenticel. But in terms of the stomata, the opening and the closing of the stomata is controlled by what we call guard cells. They are controlled by guard cells. And the opening of the guard cells is based on the process we call turgidity, and the closing of the guard cells is based on the process called flaccidity. So opening of the guard cells encourages what? Excretion to take place, and then closing of the guard cells encourages what? Do not encourage excretion to take place. Now, excretion, let me put this up again. Another way plants excrete is through the process called transpiration. Now, what is transpiration? The removal of excess water, okay, in the form of water vapor from the plants. And it is done through the leaves mostly. So transpiration is a form of excretion. It is a form of excretion. A form of excretion. So plants get rid of excess water through what? Transpiration. Now, there are also other things they get rid of, which are excretory products that are found in plants. We have carbon dioxide, we have oxygen, we have oils, we have resins, we have tannins, we have mucilages, gums, crystals, alkaloids. All these are some excretory products that are being removed or excreted from plants. They are being excreted from plants. All right, so this is where we call it a wrap-up on this particular topic on excretory system. Now, before we go, let's look at some questions using our ExamGuide app. Now, take a look at a few questions we have based on the topic we have just treated. We have quite a lot of them. Now, look at question 1. Excess water in plants is excreted as water vapor and droplets, respectively, through what? Excess water is removed as water and this thing. Now, if you could remember, I made mention of the term transpiration. I told you transpiration is a way plants carry out excretion by removing excess water in the form of water vapor. Now, once plant starts removing it in the form of droplets, not water vapor, it is called guttation. So the correct answer is B, transpiration and guttation. Now, look at question 2. That is a structure of the urinary tubules. Now, they said the mammals reabsorption of salt. Okay, in mammals, reabsorption of salt takes place in, now, if it takes place, if you look at the arrow there, it takes place, they said reabsorption of salt. Now, reabsorption of salt and other essential materials do not take place in the distal convoluted tubules. It rather takes place in the proximal convoluted tubules. So the correct answer to that question is A, which is Roman figure 4. And then also, it says mammals are capable of producing hypertonic urine mainly because of the reabsorption in where? reabsorption. When we say hypertonic, it means that the urine becomes concentrated. Now, why is it concentrated and which part is it concentrated? Now, they said because of the reabsorption in where? That is in the Henle's loop. Remember, we talked about this, that after selective reabsorption, which occurs in the proximal convoluted tubules and the loop of Henle's, we said as the flow or as the filtrate enters the distal convoluted tubules, it becomes more concentrated, that it becomes hypertonic. So what actually brought about the hypertonic nature of the filtrate or the urine or urine is actually from the Henle's loop or the loop of Henle's. So the correct answer is D. And then number 4. The part labeled 1 and 2 make up what? Now, if you look closely, the part labeled 1 and 2 make up what we call the Bowman's capsule. The part labeled 1 and 2 makes up the Bowman's capsule. And then look at this. They said the correct sequence of movement of urea during urine formation. Now, of course, it starts with the glomerulus, which has to do with ultrafiltration. And then it passes the filtrate, enters the Bowman's capsule. From the Bowman's capsule, it enters the convoluted tubules, which is the proximal convoluted tubules. From the proximal convoluted tubules, it enters the Henle's loop. From the Henle's loop to the collecting tubules, which is also known as the distal convoluted tubules. So the correct answer here is A. And then question 6, which is almost the last one. It said the glomerular filtrate contains the following except. Glomerular filtrate, that is the filtrate, contains the following except. Yes, it contains water, it contains urea, it contains glucose, but it does not contain blood corpuscles, which are the blood cells. So it doesn't contain blood cells. So the correct answer is C. And then finally, question 7, which I'm going to be using for the last today. Question 7, the Malpighian body of the kidney is made up of, the Malpighian body of the kidney is actually made up of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. The glomerulus, the Malpighian body is made up of the cortex and the medulla. Because we said before, the Malpighian body is talking about the urinary tubule in general. The glomerulus and Bowman's capsule is a part of the Malpighian body or the urinary tubule. So it is the cortex and the medulla. The cortex and the medulla. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using your ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn particular topics of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and even practice mode. It also has other features that makes learning very fun. Now, it is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to your loved ones and friends that will benefit from it. Bye for now.